stop. You are making a big mistake. Before you sign that lease agreement or hand over your down payment, you need to understand something that could save you tens of thousands of dollars. There are 15 SUVs sitting on dealer lots right now that are losing money so fast. Buying one new is basically lighting your savings on fire while the salesperson watches and smiles. I'm not talking about minor value loss. I'm talking about vehicles that lose 60, 70, even 80% of their original price within 5 years. That luxury badge you're paying a premium for? It's not protecting your investment. It's accelerating the destruction of it. Dealerships know exactly which vehicles crater in value. Manufacturers know, the finance departments know. But nobody's telling you because the moment you drive off that lot, their profit is locked in. Your loss is just beginning. Stick around because number 11 on this list will genuinely shock you. So let's expose these financial disasters one by one, starting with the SUV that is losing value the fastest, the Jaguar I-Pace. This SUV holds the honor of being the fastest depreciating vehicle in America, according to IC Cars data. Not just SUVs, not just electric vehicles, everything. This British electric crossover loses over 72% of its value in just 5 years. So, if you get a 2020 Jaguar I-Pace with pricing starting around $69,850 5 years later, that same vehicle is worth roughly $19,500. That's a loss of over $50,000. You could buy a brand new Toyota Highlander with the money that evaporated from this thing. You could put a down payment on a house. You could fund 4 years of community college. I talked to a Jaguar service advisor last month who put it bluntly. He said, "We see these come in for service, and the owners are shell-shocked when they find out what their car is worth." One guy bought his I-Pace in 2019 for $78,000. He wanted to trade it in last year. We offered him $22,000. He thought it was a joke. It wasn't. So why does the I-Pace depreciate like it's being actively hunted? Well, multiple reasons. First, Jaguar's reliability reputation isn't exactly stellar. RepairPal ranks the brand near the bottom for dependability. Second, the I-Pace's 246-mile range was competitive in 2018, but looks anemic compared to modern EVs pushing 300-plus miles. Third, the 100 kilowatts maximum charging speed is painfully slow by today's standards. And fourth, and this is the killer, Jaguar is essentially abandoning its current lineup to pivot to an all-electric luxury brand, which means the used market doesn't know what to do with existing models. The I-Pace isn't a bad vehicle to drive. The styling is gorgeous, courtesy of legendary designer Ian Callum. The interior is legitimately luxurious. But none of that matters when you're watching your equity disappear at roughly $833 per month in depreciation alone. That's before insurance, before charging costs, before the inevitable British electrical gremlins start appearing. Now, if you think losing 72% of your vehicle's value sounds catastrophic, wait until you hear about the Maserati Levante. If the Jaguar I-Pace is the depreciation champion, the Maserati Levante is the heir apparent, desperately trying to claim the throne. This Italian luxury SUV sheds value with the enthusiasm of a Ferrari shedding a first-time track day driver. We're talking about 68 to 71% value loss over 5 years, depending on trim level. And when you're starting with MSRPs that range from $79,000 to over $170,000 for the Trofeo, those percentages translate into genuinely painful dollar amounts. Let's do the math on a mid-spec Levante GTS. Starting MSRP, roughly $121,000. 5-year resale value, approximately $38,000. That's $83,000 in depreciation. You lost the equivalent of a new BMW X5M just by owning this vehicle. And here's the part that makes Maserati owners really uncomfortable. The maintenance costs don't drop proportionally with the value. A mechanic friend who specializes in Italian exotics told me something that stuck with me. He said, "The Levante is a $40,000 car that costs $120,000 to buy and $15,000 a year to maintain properly. My customers love how it sounds, love how it looks, and absolutely hate their accountants." The depreciation disaster here stems from a storm of problems. Maserati's global sales dropped nearly 60% in 2024 compared to 2023, which tells you everything about brand desirability. Reliability ratings are consistently poor. The dealer network is thin, making service inconvenient and expensive. And the Levante, despite its beautiful Trident badge and Ferrari-derived V8, shares its platform with the Jeep Grand Cherokee. This becomes increasingly awkward when you're explaining why your Italian luxury SUV needs the same parts as a vehicle that costs a third as much. The Grecale, Maserati's newer compact SUV, is somehow even worse. Early data suggests it could lose up to 91% of its value over 5 years. Maserati isn't selling vehicles at this point. They're selling the world's most expensive depreciating assets that happen to have engines. Speaking of platforms shared with cheaper vehicles, let's talk about Infiniti QX80. This SUV is essentially a Nissan Armada in a tuxedo, and watch how much extra that tuxedo costs you over time. The Infiniti QX80 is what happens when a manufacturer stops trying but keeps charging premium prices. Until the 2025 redesign finally arrived, this full-size luxury SUV was running on architecture that dated back to the mid-2000s. That's not a typo. You were paying $75,000 to $95,000 for engineering that predated the iPhone, and the depreciation reflects exactly how the used market feels about that proposition. The QX80 loses approximately 65 to 70% of its value over 5 years. On a vehicle with a starting MSRP around $75,000, that's roughly $53,000 in depreciation. But here's the truly damning comparison. Its platform mate, the Nissan Armada, starts around $57,000 and depreciates to similar absolute values. You're paying an $18,000 premium for an Infiniti badge, nicer leather, and the privilege of losing more money. I met a fleet manager last year who runs corporate transportation. He said to me, "We used to buy QX80s for executive shuttles because clients liked the space and the badge. Then we did the math on 3-year total cost of ownership versus a Tahoe. The Infiniti cost us $23,000 more per vehicle over that period. We switched. Nobody complained." Now, credit where it's due. RepairPal actually ranks the QX80 as the most reliable full-size luxury SUV, and JD Power gives it solid marks. The problem isn't that the QX80 breaks down. The problem is that the market simply doesn't value Infiniti's luxury positioning. Every used car buyer doing their research discovers that the mechanically identical Armada exists, and suddenly that Infiniti badge feels like an expensive cosmetic upgrade rather than a genuine premium product. The 2025 redesign might change this trajectory. It's a genuinely impressive update, but for anyone who bought a 2020 to 2024 QX80, the damage is done. You paid luxury prices for luxury depreciation on what was functionally a premium Nissan. Now, let's cross the Atlantic to British luxury that requires a second mortgage for maintenance. And somehow, that's not even the worst part. And I am talking about Land Rover Range Rover. If there's a vehicle that perfectly embodies the phrase, "the cheapest Range Rover is the most expensive Range Rover," it's the full-size Range Rover. This icon of British luxury off-roading loses value, with a determination that suggests it's actively trying to hurt you. If you buy this SUV at $165,000, in 5 years, it is approximately $55,000. That's $110,000 gone. At average driving distances of 13,500 miles per year, you're losing roughly $1.63 per mile in depreciation alone. Every trip to the grocery store costs you more in lost equity than the groceries themselves. The depreciation spiral is driven by that legendary unreliability perception. RepairPal ranks Land Rover near the bottom of all manufacturers for dependability. The average annual repair cost exceeds $1,200, with severity scores significantly higher than competitors. Used car buyers know this, which is why 3-year-old Range Rovers with 40,000 miles sell for less than new Toyota Highlanders. The used market has priced in the inevitable repair bills. Now, if you thought the full-size Range Rover's depreciation was painful, wait until you see what happens to its entry-level sibling, the Land Rover Discovery. Here's the shocker I promised you in the beginning of the video. The Land Rover Discovery is not a supercar or an exotic SUV. It is just a family SUV and depreciates at a rate that makes financial advisors physically uncomfortable. We're talking about 75% value loss over 5 years. 5 years and 3/4 of this vehicle's value simply evaporates. On a vehicle with a starting MSRP of around $58,000, that means your Discovery will be worth approximately $14,500 after 5 years. You lost $43,500. That's more than the total cost of a new Honda CR-V. You could have bought 2 complete vehicles, driven one and kept the other as a spare for the amount of money that disappeared from your Discovery. I watched a used car dealer auction last year, where a 2019 Discovery with 55,000 miles crossed the block. The starting bid was $18,000. It sold for $16,200. The original window sticker, still in the glove box, showed $67,000. The buyer, a wholesaler, said he'd flip it for $19,000 to someone who wants the badge but can't do the math. Are you going to be that someone? The Discovery's catastrophic depreciation comes from the same reliability concerns that plague all Land Rovers, combined with an identity crisis in the market. It's not quite as prestigious as the Range Rover, not as capable off-road as the Defender, and not as practical as competitors like the BMW X5 or Mercedes GLE. It occupies an awkward middle ground that used car buyers apparently want no part of. From bleeding British brands, let's move on to Audi Q7, a German brand that depreciates right on schedule. And the numbers might surprise you given Audi's premium reputation. Audi positions the Q7 as the sensible choice among German luxury SUVs. It's supposed to be more practical than the X5, and more understated than the GLE. What they don't mention in the brochures is that sensible apparently doesn't apply to resale value. The Q7 depreciates approximately 63% over 5 years, shedding value like it's being actively pursued by accountants. An Audi technician told me something that stuck. The Q7 is a great vehicle to work on. Everything's accessible, the engineering makes sense. The problem is, everything's expensive. We replaced one air suspension strut. That's $2,800 in parts alone. Does the customer need a new MMI screen? $3,400. These aren't repairs. They're ransoms. And speaking of ransoms, part of why the Q7 loses value is partly because of Audi's own lineup decisions. The Q8 positioned above it steals luxury buyers. The Q5 below it offers similar utility at a lower price point, and competitors like the Genesis GV80 deliver comparable luxury with dramatically better value retention. The Q7 exists in an uncomfortable middle space where it's too expensive to be practical and not exclusive enough to hold its value. German luxury might depreciate hard, but at least it depreciates predictably. American luxury? That's where things get genuinely creative in terms of value destruction. Let's talk about a vehicle that's basically a chrome-plated piggy bank with a slow leak. I'm talking about none other than Cadillac Escalade ESV. The Cadillac Escalade is an American icon. It's the vehicle that says, "I've arrived," while simultaneously announcing, "I'm leaving money on the table." The ESV, the stretched version with the extra wheelbase, takes that depreciation and supersizes it, just like everything else about this land yacht. We're looking at approximately 62.9% value loss over 5 years. What that means in real money is that a 2020 Escalade ESV Premium Luxury, which began around $98,000, would be worth $36,000 to $40,000, depending on condition and mileage. That's about $58,000 to $62,000 in depreciation. You could buy a fully loaded new Toyota Sequoia, which is basically the same size, same capability, and demonstrably more reliable, for what the Escalade lost in value. No wonder a luxury car dealer I know calls the Escalade the equity vampire. He told me, every customer who trades in an Escalade has the same look on their face, this mix of disbelief and acceptance. They knew it was happening, they just didn't want to do the math until they were standing in front of me. Last month, a guy traded a 3-year-old ESV and owed more on the loan than the car was worth. Underwater on a $100,000 vehicle. That's the Escalade experience. So what makes this SUV lose value faster than light? The reasons vary a bit. Cadillac's overall brand perception has struggled for decades despite the Escalade's individual success. The running costs: fuel economy averaging around 14 mpg, premium fuel required, maintenance expenses that rival European luxury brands, scare off used car buyers, and the sheer size limits the buyer pool to people who actually need a vehicle this massive. From the American land yacht to its slightly more refined cousin, a vehicle that somehow manages to be even more forgettable while depreciating at nearly the same pace. Let's talk about what happens when luxury becomes invisible. Let's talk about Lincoln Navigator L. Lincoln is living in the Escalade's shadow and paying for it. If the Escalade is the flashy celebrity, the Lincoln Navigator L is its understudy who never quite got the breakthrough role. This stretched luxury SUV has played second fiddle to Cadillac for over 2 decades, and the depreciation numbers reflect that positioning with brutal clarity. The Navigator L loses approximately 61% of its value over 5 years, slightly better than the Escalade, but starting from a higher price point that negates any advantage. A new Navigator L starts around $83,000 and can push well past $110,000. 5 years later, you're looking at resale values in the $32,000 to $43,000 range. That represents a depreciation hit of $51,000 to $67,000. For context, you could have bought a new Lincoln Corsair, Lincoln's compact luxury SUV, every single year for 5 years and still spent less money than you lost on one Navigator L. A Lincoln sales manager was remarkably candid with me. He said, "The Navigator is a fantastic vehicle, better ride quality than the Escalade, more refined interior, more comfortable second row. But none of that matters when customers walk in wanting the nameplate recognition. They see Navigator, they think nice. They see Escalade, they think status. We discount Navigators to move them. We mark up Escalades because we can. Same customers, different perception, massive price difference." RepairPal ranks Lincoln poorly for reliability, and Lincoln ranked 24th out of 32 brands. The Navigator inherits some of the Ford Expedition's known issues along with its platform, J.D. Power gives the Navigator solid marks, but the perception problem is baked in. Lincoln has spent decades trying to establish itself as a genuine luxury brand while fighting against its Ford parts bin reputation. The depreciation curve is the market's verdict on that effort. Now, we've been talking about traditional luxury SUVs bleeding value. But nothing, and I mean nothing, depreciates quite like electric vehicles from premium brands. Let's talk about Tesla Model X. The Tesla Model X was supposed to be the future of SUVs. Electric, tech-forward, and featuring those dramatic falcon wing doors that made every soccer practice drop-off feel like a movie premiere. What nobody mentioned was that the future apparently includes watching your investment evaporate faster than the charge in cold weather. The Model X depreciates approximately 63% over 5 years, making it one of the worst-holding EVs in a segment already known for catastrophic value loss. A 2020 Model X long range started around $80,000. Today, you can find similar examples with reasonable mileage for $29,000 to $34,000. That's $46,000 to $51,000 in depreciation. And here's what makes the Model X particularly painful. Those falcon wing doors, the vehicle's most distinctive feature, are also its most expensive repair. A single door mechanism failure can run $5,000 to $8,000 to fix. Used car buyers know this, and they price it in. A Tesla owner in my neighborhood has become the unofficial cautionary tale on our street. He bought a Model X Performance in 2019 for $104,000. Last year, one falcon wing door stopped working, and he quoted $7,200 for the repair. He decided to sell instead. Best offer? $38,000. He'd lost $66,000 in 4 years. Tesla killed the Model X due to their own pricing instability. The company has cut prices multiple times since 2020, effectively devaluing every used Model X with each announcement. Add in the rapid advancement of EV technology, making older models feel dated, and the complexity of the falcon wing mechanism scaring off used buyers, and you've got a perfect depreciation storm. But if you think the Model X is bad, its smaller sibling somehow manages to lose an even higher percentage of its value despite costing less to begin with. Yes, I am talking about Tesla Model Y. Here's an uncomfortable truth that Tesla enthusiasts don't want to discuss. The Model Y, despite being the best-selling electric vehicle in America, depreciates like nobody wants it. The numbers are stark: approximately 60% value loss over 5 years. For a vehicle that starts around $45,000, that's roughly $27,000 in depreciation. You could buy a new Honda HR-V outright with the money your Model Y will lose. The depreciation dynamics here are fascinating and frustrating. In 2020, the Model Y started around $50,000. Tesla has since cut that price multiple times to roughly $45,000, a 10% reduction before inflation. Every price cut immediately devalues every used Model Y on the market. It's as if Toyota announced that all Camrys would cost $5,000 less starting tomorrow. Anyone who bought yesterday just lost money, and they are about to lose some more. The EV depreciation crisis affects all electric vehicles. The segment average is 49.1% over 5 years compared to 38.8% for all vehicles, but Tesla's pricing volatility makes it particularly severe. Federal tax credits further complicate things, as buyers can get $7,500 off a new Model Y, making used examples even less attractive. Now let's move on from the electric future to the gasoline past and talk about some full-size SUVs that aren't luxury brands but still manage to depreciate. You probably have been wondering why I have mentioned Nissan Armada. Now I have. Remember how I mentioned the Infiniti QX80 shares its platform with a cheaper Nissan? Meet that cheaper Nissan and discover that cheaper is relative when you're still losing value. The Nissan Armada loses approximately 52% of its value over 5 years. That might sound better than the luxury SUVs we've discussed, but context matters. The Armada starts around $57,000, which means you're still looking at roughly $30,000 in depreciation. Here's what makes the Armada's depreciation particularly frustrating. It finally got a redesign for 2025 after years of running on dated architecture. That's great for new buyers, but catastrophic for anyone who purchased a 2021, 2024 model. The used market is now flooded with old design Armadas that look visibly outdated compared to the refreshed version. Resale values have dropped accordingly. And speaking of dropping values, this next SUV brand losing value would shock you. Could you have guessed that the Ford Expedition would be on this list? The Ford Expedition has been hauling American families for decades. But what those families might not realize is that it's also been hauling their money directly into the depreciation furnace. The Expedition loses approximately 49% of its value over 5 years. And when you're starting at $57,000 to $80,000 plus depending on trim, those percentages translate into serious money. I have a family friend who traded in his 2020 Expedition last year. He'd bought it for $72,000 with every option, and was only able to trade it in for $31,000. No wonder he actually laughed like he was crazy when he was telling me his experience. The experience can be maddening. All that money gone. The Expedition's depreciation is partly explained by Ford's recent reliability struggles. Consumer Reports hasn't been kind to Ford's quality ratings, and word spreads. But the bigger issue is the truck-based SUV market itself. These vehicles are expensive to fuel, expensive to maintain, and have a limited buyer pool that pushes used values down aggressively. So Ford will depreciate fast. What then is the next choice of SUV that's worth it? I can tell you what's not worth it, and it's this next brand here. BMW X7. I am telling you, this luxurious German engineering SUV has a German-sized depreciation. BMW's full-size luxury SUV represents everything the brand does well. Powerful engines, precision handling, technology-forward interiors, and of course, significant depreciation. The X7 loses approximately 55 to 60% of its value over 5 years, which represents one of the steeper declines in the luxury SUV segment. Just like the other SUVs in this video, With starting prices around $80,000 and fully loaded options exceeding $110,000, the depreciation math becomes genuinely painful. On that loaded option, you're looking at $60,000 to $66,000 in value loss. That's a new Mercedes GLC. That's a Tesla Model Y with money left over. That's the down payment on a modest house. Evaporated. From Bavarian precision to Swedish safety, let's examine a luxury SUV that's consistently won awards for protecting occupants while consistently failing to protect their investments. The Volvo XC90. Volvo has built its entire brand around safety, and the XC90 delivers on that promise comprehensively. What it doesn't deliver is value retention. The XC90 depreciates approximately 58.7% over 5 years, according to IC Cars data. With starting prices around $58,000 for the base model and realistically $68,000 to $75,000 for how most buyers configure them, you're looking at depreciation losses in the $34,000 to $44,000 range. The plug-in hybrid versions fare even worse. They lose over 60% of their value as EV technology advances and used buyers become wary of aging battery systems. A Volvo service writer told me something interesting. XC90 owners are the most loyal customers we have. They love the vehicles, love the brand, love the safety story. Then lease end comes, and they see the residual. We lose a lot of them to leasing the next generation rather than buying out. Nobody wants to pay buyout prices that are above market value. The disconnect between how much owners love these cars and how little the market values them is something I've never been able to explain. The way the market devalues them is driven by Consumer Reports' reliability concerns. They've consistently given it below average predicted reliability scores. And Volvo has a relatively small dealer network, which makes service less convenient than German competitors. The brand's aggressive push toward electrification has also created uncertainty about the long-term serviceability of current ICE and hybrid models. And finally, the vehicle on this that would make some or all of you angry: Mercedes-Benz GLS. Mercedes positions the GLS as the S-class of SUVs, the pinnacle of luxury, comfort, and technology in SUV form. What they don't mention is that it also shares the S-Class's legendary depreciation curve. The GLS loses approximately 52% of its value over 5 years. That might sound moderate until you realize the starting price is $83,000 and most buyers spec their GLS well into six-figure territory. A Mercedes brand specialist was refreshingly honest during a conversation. The GLS buyer doesn't care about depreciation, or at least they tell themselves they don't. These customers are leasing, usually on 36-month terms, and rolling into the next model when it arrives. The people who buy outright, they're the ones who call 3 years later, shocked that their $150,000 SUV is worth $72,000. We have that conversation a lot. It never gets easier to deliver that news. The GLS depreciates for all the classic luxury reasons: high maintenance costs averaging over $1,100 annually, complex technology that becomes outdated quickly, and a used market that simply doesn't value 3-year-old Mercedes the way it values new ones. RepairPal ranks Mercedes-Benz 27th out of 32 brands for reliability, and the GLS's air suspension, multiple screens, and semi-autonomous driving features all represent potential future repair bills that used buyers are pricing in aggressively. So, what do you do with this information? Now, here's where this gets genuinely useful. If you're in the market for an SUV, this depreciation data shouldn't scare you away from these vehicles. It should inform your buying strategy. The smart play is to let someone else absorb the depreciation hit. Every vehicle on this list becomes a dramatically better value proposition as a 2 to 3-year-old certified pre-owned purchase. That Jaguar I-Pace that loses $50,000 new? Buy it 3 years old for $25,000, and most of the loss has already happened. That Mercedes GLS that costs $130,000 new? Find a 3-year-old one for $65,000 and you're getting the same vehicle, same luxury, same technology, same presence, at half price. Now that you know what to do, how about what to say at the dealership? When you're negotiating on any of these vehicles, use the depreciation data as leverage. Tell them, I've researched the residual values on this model. I know it loses 60% in 5 years. I'm willing to buy, but your price needs to reflect that reality. If they won't move, walk. There's always another dealer with more motivation. These vehicles don't sell themselves. The depreciation data proves that. So there you have it. 15 SUVs that are bleeding value faster than dealerships want you to know. From the Jaguar I-Pace losing 72% of its value to the Mercedes GLS, dropping $73,000 in 5 years, these aren't just vehicles. They're financial instruments with negative returns. But here's the perspective that matters. Depreciation is only a problem if you're buying new and selling later. For used car buyers, for people willing to let someone else take that initial hit, every vehicle on this list represents opportunity. These are genuinely excellent SUVs being sold at massive discounts because the original owners absorbed the depreciation punishment. That's not a problem to avoid. That's an arbitrage opportunity to exploit. If this video saved you from making an expensive mistake, or showed you how to profit from someone else's expensive mistake, like this video and hit that subscribe button. There are still some automobile secrets we'll reveal to you, and the next one would be a banger. See you there.